Hey y'all, it's Stephie and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing with you the journey of Kendall, who is a tax manager at a mid-tier accounting firm. His story is so interesting. He has worked his way, through a local accounting firm to industry positions to where he is now today. So I'm so excited to share with you guys his journey. Also to give more information on the tax side of the accounting profession. So if you like this kind of content, then please be sure to let me know by giving the video a like. If you are a professional either in the accounting profession or other professions and you would like to share your journey with the Stephie fam, then please be sure to shoot me an email. I'll list it down in the description box for you guys. And then also please just give me a little bit of background on your career journey, and we will get some time scheduled for you to come onto the channel. All right, since all that housekeeping is taken care of, let's go ahead and jump right into the video.
So thank you so much for being open to sharing your face and talking about your story and everything like that.
Oh, I'm really excited.
Yeah.
This is the first time I saw you post one of the career journey videos that we were commenting, and you were like, "Oh, I'd love to have you on," and I was like, "Me? Me?"
Of course. No, your journey is it's inspirational because I get a lot of questions from people like, how do you get into public accounting if you didn't go the traditional route? And I can only share my secondhand observations. I'm so excited about your story, and because you're on the tax side, because I know a lot of people are like, give tax a little bit more love, but I'm like, I don't know much about tax. Yeah. So no, I'm so excited. So to jump right into it, I remember you like for a long time, and I don't remember, when I started seeing your comments, but I know you've been like a long time, supporter of me and my channel, and very encouraging. So I really appreciate that. It makes me feel really, happy to be in touch with you and see how your career has grown over the years, and for you always supporting me. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. You give such good advice. Anyone out there who's just starting this video, I've been watching for several years, and your friendly sisterly advice, I've taken those videos and I've applied them in my own career, my own life. I've asked you questions. I sent you the world's longest email a couple of years ago, and you responded to it like point by point and gave me tips. And I think you do such a good job for our community that, of course, I would come on your channel to help, shed some light on the tax side, and, hope that my story can somehow help, even just one person. That would be awesome to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. And I know I feel terrible sometimes because I do get quite a few emails, from people, and it was easier. I'm so grateful for where I was at a few years ago, because it was easier for me to connect with people on a one-on-one basis. And now I just, it's difficult, even as much as I want to, it's difficult, but timing's everything for sure. So anyways, we can jump right into it. So if you want to first kind of give kind of a high level background of how you got into accounting and what your career, like your college career kind of looked like, and your current career journey, and then we can dig into some of the interesting nitty gritty parts of it.
It dates all the way back to high school.
Mm-hmm.
My high school had electives like a lot of high schools do, and I kind of, by the time I was a senior in high school, kind of had two careers in mind, either business, kind of accounting or finance, and the other one was like maybe be a chiropractor. So I did all these elective classes in like health and anatomy, and I also took 2 accounting classes in high school. And it's only in hindsight that you really have this kind of information that kind of allows you to see like the path that was made for you. So taking those 2 business classes, the teacher was really great, and we did a couple of debits and credits. We did like a small P&L and a balance sheet, and that was very interesting to me, and I really liked it. And then the anatomy and stuff kind of made me realize, oh, this isn't for me. So kind of the opposite, letting me know that that's probably not something that was in my future. And then another big thing in high school was I was on the yearbook and newspaper staff. And as I would find out later, the way you run a yearbook, I grew up in Arkansas. Our yearbook was like a top 10 yearbook, even though we grew up in a really, really small town of you know, less than 10,000 people. You know, we competed at competitions for writing and photography and things like that. And so you run a big yearbook like a big corporate tax department, which is so interesting and funny.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
you start at the very beginning of the time period and you assign out the task, and you know, you have certain deadlines that you have to meet and you're responsible for getting those met. And
Mhm.
then at the end, you have this really big work product that everyone can look at and see. A big part of me getting into business and thinking about business, we did ad sales and we had meetings every day where we had to, you know, a round table and had to update people on our statuses about where we were and if we needed help, what kind of help we were looking for. And then moving out of high school, I actually went to a community college for a couple of years.
Okay.
I lived at home for 2 years. The tuition is always a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable. And
Mhm.
I knew I didn't want to go into a university and just get in tons of debt,
Mhm.
and you know, to have a little bit of a break between high school and university. I was able to take classes. I took a couple business classes. I took my histories and my maths and my englishes, those types of things
Mhm.
that you're required to take. And I was also working this job at a pizza place, which may not sound like you know, the best thing to put on your resume, but the longer I was there, the more I was able to pick up from the owner. It was a small business ran by a single mom, and she taught me how to calculate my own payroll taxes every
Oh,
time I got
wow.
paid. I helped her pay rent and order inventory supplies. The combination of all those events before I even got into university were things that put me on the path to being in business school. May of 2011, I quit that job. I got my associate's degree and I moved to the big city and was enrolling in the university. Got a part time intern position at a public accounting firm.
Okay.
So I started that when I was 19, which is really funny. Worked there all the way through my undergrad. So May 2011 through December of 2013. So I did 4.5 years to get all of my hours, the 150 hours to sit for the CPA
Oh,
exam,
wow.
and worked there full time afterwards for a couple of years. And that was great. It's a lot of small, but it was a small local public accounting firm. So we
Okay.
did small business accounting, we did sales tax and payroll tax and bookkeeping. We didn't do audits, but we did a couple of financial statements. We reviewed some GAAP level financials. We prepared some on income tax basis. We did a lot of tax returns, a lot of different types of tax returns. So I kind of just fell into tax by accident by getting that job and
Mhm.
really loving it and really having a good time and having really good mentors from a really early age. One being not that many years older than I was, and then the other being the partner and founder of the firm. So that was instrumental in me getting into tax.
Okay.
And after a little while, it just kind of got to the point where I thought I wanted bigger and better. And that may sound silly or, you know, small-minded or something, but I felt like there was more for me. And so I
Mhm.
went looking for jobs and I wound up getting a tax accountant position at a Fortune 500 company called Tyson Foods.
Mm.
They're
I love their
based in Arkansas.
nuggets.
It's really, yes, yes. They make an assortment of products, but
Okay.
you know, they have a lot of brands under their umbrella, and um, that that position was also instrumental in maintaining my role in tax. I learned so many things there, and still to this day think back about that experience. So getting from the small public accounting firm to there, me and my wife were moving. She was still in undergrad. So we had to find a place that you know, she could continue her undergrad and get that out of the way. So taking that job allowed us to both get something out of it. I got a kind of boost to my resume, this really big job that could turn out, which did turn out really well for me. And she also got to finish at a good school. From there, my wife was accepted to pharmacy school, and there wasn't one in that area. So I actually had to leave that job after about 2 years. It was two tax return cycles. And so we moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where my
Mhm.
wife started pharmacy school. And I got a senior tax position at a different Fortune 500 company called Hilton Worldwide. They own and operate the Hilton brands of hotels. And I worked there for about 2.5 years. And that was kind of the period of time where I actually passed the CPA exam. So in the beginning, when I was in college, I knew about it. I knew I wanted to take it. Tried while I was at the public accounting firm, but I graduated, I got married, I tried to take the exam, and I didn't really have a lot of good studying habits, and I didn't know how hard the exam was, and didn't always get through the study material, and then had to show up for my test, and
Yeah.
was in that cycle for a couple of years. While I was at Tyson Foods, I actually passed the first section that I took. I took reg I passed it, and that kind of set me up to be more confident about the exam.
Mm-hmm.
And then, things in my personal life and then moving again to Memphis kind of derailed me a little bit. But while I was at Hilton, my reg exam that I took, I lost credit for and I had to start over.
Mm-hmm.
And I did end up passing all 4 parts while working there and getting my CPA license while working there. In February of this year, I was offered a job at a mid-tier public accounting firm where I currently work as a tax manager.
That's funny. Sorry, I got so excited about Tyson chicken nuggets because I love Tyson's. Your experience is so interesting. There's so many questions, and I'm sure everyone who's watching are going to have so many questions too. Just as an FYI, you may need to hang out in the comments a little bit every now and then when people have questions, if you don't mind, of course. Digging into your experience, you and I have been in touch. I know that there's kind of an interesting story with your mid-tier firm, so we'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to touch on the fact that you said you felt like there was something more for you to I guess expand your skill set and stuff like that. That's why you moved from your accounting firm, the first accounting firm, to corporate. I feel like it's normal for people to want to gain more or for some people to want to gain more experience, that they feel like maybe they want to expand because they have long-term goals they want to get to. There are a lot of people too who get into a role and they love it. They just want to stay in it and they don't want to do more than that. And that's totally fine too. Like, I think you kind of need there are people like a balance of both. You need some people who want to do just that, and you need people who also kind of want to move further. So I just wanted to touch on that. I think where you're coming from is you weren't trying to sound like from an ego-driven place, but I think it's definitely, I think that's, definitely fine for some people who want that, who want to increase their skill sets and stuff like that.
To touch on that a little bit, leaving that job, it's a lot of different things that I had to focus on and learn. And sometimes it just felt like I couldn't really grasp getting something down and being excellent at it. I was just average at everything I did. And then moving into the corporate industry job for the first time, it was only income tax. I didn't have to do sales tax. I didn't have to do payroll tax. I didn't have to work on financial statements. It was only the income tax portion for the US and states, and that allowed me a deeper dive and a focus area. And some people, it's a delicate balance because you don't want to get too pigeonholed too early. But in tax, let me just tell you, there's so much variety. There's so much you can do. You can be a generalist 40 years and not see the things that maybe I see because I'm so focused on one area at this point. So anyone who's interested in a student, there are so many paths, and there's no wrong path. It's just what you want out of life, or what you stumble into, or what you find interesting.
Right, absolutely. So your experience, so now you're more specializing. Is it now like it's primarily corporate tax? Can you share what you are more focused in now, whether it's deferred tax asset calculations or returns or whatever? I'm trying to talk the talk, but I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so
that gets me really excited. Currently in the mid-tier firm, I manage engagement. Most of my focus is C corporations, the tax compliance for those engagements, federal, state. Some of my clients have an international operations that we have to consult with our International Tax Services Group to make sure we get those signed off. And then the other piece of my job is ASC 740, or accounting for income taxes. If you're taking an advanced accounting course or maybe like an intermediate 3, you may touch on that a little bit. This is an area that I've been interested in a long time. Since I worked at Tyson, I didn't get to work on the tax provision, as it's commonly called, but we did estimates for it. Hilton, the group that did the tax compliance, the tax returns, we actually maintained the deferred balance rolls. So we
Okay.
maintain the deferred tax assets, the deferred tax liabilities, and would roll those from year to year and make sure those were appropriate for the provision group. That was like a half step in the right direction for me. And in my 2.5 years there, we actually had someone leave the company and move away to a different state. And that allowed me to work as a tax senior in the tax reporting group or tax provision group. So I calculated the estimated annual effective tax rate, the EAETR, for 2 quarters. And I helped do the annual provision in January. That type of stuff is just so exciting to me, because if you're struggling to figure out like what that is and what that really means, think about it as the intersection of the income tax laws and GAAP reporting, because ASC 740 is GAAP, and you do have to follow all the GAAP rules, but you have to implement the current enacted tax laws while doing so. To me, there's just nothing more exciting than a tax provision, because you're always having to constantly ask questions to the clients. You're always having to dig in and to do research when new areas pop up, or if they want to take a new tax position, if they want to do some restructuring, you have to account for all that in the financial statements.
Would you say that could possibly be doing tax compliance, which would be like the tax, like your federal annual tax return,
Mm-hmm.
and like state tax returns if they have state tax or use tax or whatever? And then
Mm-hmm.
the other side of it would be like the what you were saying, the tax provision side, where you're helping them calculate what would end up in the financial statements with regard to like the taxes and such like that, and what you owe
Yeah.
as well. Do you guys does it also affect what you owe to the government,
Mm-hmm.
like when you do that calculation?
Yeah, when you do a tax provision, there's a couple different components. You have to do a current piece, a current tax provision, which is going to estimate all known factors of what you'll owe for the current year. So that'll affect the payable, what you owe, or maybe a receivable if you're in a position. It's hard to speak in layman terms sometimes for
Yeah,
people who
no.
don't fully get it, because I try to explain it to my parents sometimes who are so far outside of accounting and finance, and they're like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also footnote disclosures.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a C corp, you will have a footnote about your income tax, and there are certain things that are required to be put in there, and we have to analyze that. Sometimes we will prepare the provision if there's not an independence issue. I'm
Okay.
currently about to onboard a new client that is a manufacturer, and they want to stay SEC independent with us. Our firm is going to do the audit, and we are going to review the tax provision. So I'll assist the auditors and be a tax specialist on the audit team. An outside firm will be preparing it, so we'll be looking over their work, and then when it's time to do the tax returns, we will do the tax returns.
Maybe just to give someone who hasn't done like a tax class before, do you have just like a couple examples of something that is treated one way in the tax laws in a provision, or that you would be considering in the provision that you would have to adjust to meet GAAP?
Yeah, so the starting place for both your tax return and your tax provision is going to be your net book income that you'll get from the audit team if you're working with an audit team. Really, the only difference between your tax return and your tax provision is that the provision is normally like your best estimate. Like if you're thinking about doing accruals on GAAP basis and stuff like that, we're taking all the information we have to create the tax provision. And that's kind of your baseline to start a tax return if you have a tax provision being calculated. And then differences between the tax return and the tax provision will be trued up in the next provision. So
Gotcha.
usually you want those to be as small as possible, because when you file the tax return, if the audit is finished and you've done the tax return is kind of the final piece to that. So let's talk about two different types of differences. So you'll have permanent differences and you'll have temporary differences from a tax perspective. Book income from the audit team, right? And let's say you have a meals and entertainment account. And, we have to analyze that, because now the tax laws say that you can't deduct any entertainment. So that's a permanent difference. So when you do your tax return, you do your tax provision. If there's $100,000 of entertainment and your book income is $200,000, that means you have to add that back to your book income. So then, just with that one piece, that takes you from a starting point of $200,000, you add back the $100,000. Now you have $300,000 of taxable income.
Gotcha.
So it's very important to analyze those accounts and make sure that you have the rules right. And that difference is normally permanent in nature, and so there's not going to be a reversal at any time. The best example for a temporary difference is depreciation. I think students could really get that in mind. So let's say you have an asset that is being depreciated for book purposes over 5 years. Well, for tax purposes, there's a lot of times you can accelerate depreciation. So you may be able to fully depreciate that asset in the year it's set up. So you may have a $10,000 asset for book purposes that has, just a little bit of depreciation every single year over 5 years. But for tax, you are taking the full depreciation in the first year in some situations. So that $10,000 asset, you're probably going to depreciate all $10,000 over 5 years. But for tax, you just accelerate and you take it in the first year. Well, let's say at the end of 5 years, for tax and book, it's fully depreciated and you get rid of it. That at that point, you have the same amount of accumulated depreciation for tax and for book purposes. That's why it's temporary. It's just a timing difference.
I feel like we could talk about more tax stuff for forever. So
I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, no, and I love that certain people who I would meet, throughout my career can be kind of like closed-minded about, this or that parts of accounting. It's like, for me, it was like, if you like controls, like there's something, you're very weird. Like, why do you like controls? It makes no sense. If you're on the tax side, I don't know why they like taxes, whatever. And I love when I find people who are like passionate and really interested in what they're doing, because a breath of fresh air, whenever someone actually really enjoys what they do. And obviously I can tell you really like what you do because you're willing to spend your free time talking with me about it. So
on a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And especially right before Thanksgiving, I'm sure you're, crazy deadlines. Do I see a little friend?
Yes, we have.
Oh, Sadie is
She's
Sadie
the
pug mix? Is she the one that we talked about with a little tracheal collapse? Maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, she does have a little bit of that. So we've started, like when I open the door to take her outside, I kind of just pick her up and then place her down instead of letting her run out the door, because she'll like run and then she'll catch on the leash and kind of like hurt herself a little bit. So I've been having to be a little more cautious with her, but she's here for the meeting as well. Little Sadie, she'll turn 6 this week. So we've got a birthday coming up.
Oh my goodness, happy birthday, Sadie. She's so cute.
She's a rascal.
The rest of the Stephie fam, I'm sure if you guys are interested in hearing more tax-related things, let us know. And then maybe, either Kendall can come back onto my channel or Kendall can start his own YouTube channel and chat about it there,
The thought has crossed my mind, but it kind of takes me back to people who are a fan of sports. Like, you watch the NFL, but you're not going to go and sign up for the draft, right? Like, you're not going to try to go and be the quarterback. That's kind of how I feel about YouTube. I love YouTube. I still don't know that I would be the best YouTuber at putting up content on a regular basis. And it's so much work. And that's why I'm so appreciative to be here and to interact with all the other channels that I interact with.
Well, then in that case, we'll just have to have you on again and talk more tax related things then. To dig more into your journey, hearing your move from industry to the mid-tier firm, right? It sounds like you've constantly been kind of like, growing your skill set and everything. And I wanted you to chat more in detail about when you got from, like when you were interviewing from Hilton to your mid-tier firm and the fun twists and turns, because now, you are a tax manager there. So I wanted you to touch on that because from my recollection, you said that you had actually interviewed for a tax senior position. And they had offered you a tax manager. So I think that is so interesting and I mean like amazing. So anyways, if you could chat more about that, kind of how that went.
In the back of my mind, not in the back of my mind, the very front of my mind, when I was at Hilton, these big corporate tax departments, some people may not know, but a lot of them, especially Fortune 500 list, they're audited by the Big Four. When they have a tax issue where they're wanting, an outside opinion, they normally go to a different Big Four to get that opinion, or they may use the same audit firm depending on what type of scenario you're in, because sometimes an audit firm can't offer you tax services because of independence rules, but sometimes they certainly can. I got this mindset of Big Four bust in my head. And, people who go into the Big Four, especially right out of college, it's a great learning experience. I think if you get a little bit of experience and then you go Big Four, I think it's still really, really valuable. Once it's on your resume, it'll never go away. You will always be able to talk about it and how you've had that experience. I don't have Big Four experience on my resume. And I thought that that's what I wanted for a really long time. So once I got my CPA exams passed and I got licensed, I was at Hilton, and it just kind of felt like the time to start interviewing and talking around. So I had, we don't have to name names, but I had one telephone interview with the Big Four for a senior role. And at this point, I had right at 5 years of experience. What you'll learn sometimes is when you're in industry, you don't always get promoted just because you have the skill set. There has to be an opening. And that was hard for me to accept because I, came in and did a lot of work and felt I had a lot of improvements, and they were happy with my performance. But I had a peer who was hired 6 months before me get promoted because he was there first. That was kind of the time period when I moved out of the tax return work at Hilton and moved into the tax provision work to kind of learn a new skill set. And it was actually something really exciting to me, and it has helped me. It helped me get my job that I have now, having that tax provision experience. So in the fall of 2019, I started looking around and talking to firms. I had the one call with the Big Four for a tax role. That didn't work out. It was kind of a weird situation where the recruiter thought that the local office had the spot open, and she was told that. And then I had a call with the recruiter, and she liked my resume and she liked me, and she sent my resume to the partner, and the partner said, "We don't have that position open at this office." So that was the end of it. And I was like, okay.
Technical difficulties, so annoying.
That's the story of the day, isn't it?
For real. I'm like, Zoom, get your crap together. Everyone uses you. You should be working just fine.
You didn't miss much. I just reheated my coffee and cranked on the AC.
Yeah, it gets, I know, like, I get really warm whenever I'm like filming and all the other stuff. So, I think the last part where it dropped off was where you were sharing, you were talking to the Big Four. They didn't have an open position in the office that you had originally thought.
Went away from that thinking, okay, I had a good interview experience. And in the meantime, I was talking with some peers and stuff that I trusted about what I could expect. And even though I had 6 years of experience, it seemed like moving out of industry into public accounting, that consensus was probably moving in laterally would be the best way, the easiest way, or perhaps the only way. So I had that in my head, and that's kind of what I did, is kind of just shopped around to different firms. So if you are interested in tax, there's I'm on Twitter. There's a lot of tax professionals on Twitter. You can look at the hashtag tax Twitter, and you will find people all across the country, different size firms and industry, talking about ongoing issues, struggles with clients, people just chatting back and forth and getting to know each other. It's really fun. So you guys can follow me there and talk about tax with other professionals as well. But through that, there was a partner at a firm called Dixon Hughes Goodman, and the partner was based out of North Carolina. And I was tweeting with people and saying, I'm in industry, I have my CPA license, I have this much experience, and I'm looking to leave, and I want public accounting again. I want to go back. And in my head, it was either Big Four, mid-tier, and just engage with a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions. The funniest opinion was, stay where you are, don't go back to public. And I was like, I wouldn't be asking the question if I wasn't interested. Their Memphis office didn't have any ASC 740 work, but a lot of those mid-tier firms, they operate on a regional basis, so they talked to me about that, but that didn't seem like it felt right. Then I talked to a second Big Four firm. They did a position. So I had a verbal, but then a written Big Four offer, and it was for a lateral move. And I considered taking it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was chatting with the firm that I work for now, first in the Memphis office, because that's where I was when I started the interview process. And the partner let me know that they couldn't hire me in the Memphis office. And I was really devastated. And I think my reaction to that solidified like my want to join that specific firm for a host of reasons. Then a little while later, around the time I was getting the Big Four offer, they came back and said, we have a position in Nashville, or we have a position in Atlanta that you're welcome to interview for. We really liked you. We just couldn't hire you in this office.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, well, I'll think about it. And I interviewed with the Nashville team at this firm, and I just really clicked. I met most of the partners and directors through lunches and dinners. And then I met the management team through a series of interviews on one day. And then they sent me to lunch with the staff. And I felt like that's where I belonged, and that's where I am now. So I applied for what you would call like an experienced senior position or something like that. And they came back with the management offer. So I was hired as a tax manager. And I think there are a couple different reasons why. I think first, the number of years of experience that I had, even though I wasn't confident enough to apply to the open manager role, they took into consideration who I was on paper and who I was in person.
Mm-hmm.
And then another factor is when you're in public accounting and you start and you move up, you can move up rather quickly. And so they had someone in this office that was looking to be promoted to manager within the most recent cycle. And that person had less years of experience than I did. And so, as they should, they offered me the manager role to be in line with that line of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't come in and have someone with more years of experience over me, which can happen in some positions, but in this role, in what I was going to be doing, they felt like that role was what fit my skills and experience set the best. I turned down the Big Four and I joined a mid-tier firm.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your story. I've shared my experience with my mid-tier firm before. It started out really great, and then it kind of stuff happens and whatever. But overall, it was a good experience before stuff happened. The mid-tier firm I was at, that's the firm that you're at. The culture is very different from office to office and from team to team, department to department. So I love the fact that, you had that experience with the same firm that I did, that they recognized, your worth and your level of skill and your experience, and that they gave you what you deserved, even though you didn't apply for that. They gave you what you deserved based on your merit. And I love that. It can show you that just because there's a rotten apple here doesn't mean it's going to be somewhere else. And me sharing my experience, I never wanted it to be like, that's a shitty place, don't go there, but it's just it all depends on the people. So I'm so glad that you had such a good experience where you felt like you belonged and you were welcomed and all that. So that part makes me real happy to hear,
especially for people who are in their first year. Maybe you're in a Big Four office where you feel like you're an outsider. It's probably just the people you're around. Other departments may treat you way differently if you're open to expanding, and a lot of times you can move between departments and firms. Or if you're in that situation and you're finding it tough, it's probably not just you, and potentially it could just be that office or that particular circumstance that you're in that
right.
you can move forward from and grow from and be better from. Big Four that made me the offer for the lateral move,
right. Mm-hmm.
that was to start in March of 2020. And they told me that they do increases in merits. They determine that in May, and then it's awarded in August. But I would not be included in that in my first year. I would have to work for 14 months. I would have to work March of 2020 to May of 2021, and then they would evaluate and promote me to manager based on my merit of my performance for the year. In August, I didn't accept that job at the Big Four. In August, they promoted someone to manager that has 2 to 3 years of experience less than I do. Pretty sure that was already in the works. So I think I'm really glad that I didn't take the Big Four offer and then been under someone with several years of experience less than I did being a manager over me. And
Mhm.
that's not to be an ego thing. That's just you have to work for what you deserve sometimes, especially in public accounting. You have to quantify your experience, you have to quantify your skill set, and you have to prove yourself a lot of times. When I found out that that happened, I was like, I know that I made the best choice for me. I know that I am in a place where I have a lot of room to grow and have a lot of experiences that I can still obtain at this firm.
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm glad you shared that because, with the technical difficulties, I lost my train of thought and I was like, I had so many questions. So, um, you had mentioned earlier that you were so set on Big Four experience, right? Like you really wanted to get that because it's going to be on your resume. I guess I had two questions for that. The first being, like I think probably because it relates to job opportunities. Is that why you were so like focused on Big Four? Because I don't know really the experience that's asked for on the tax side when you start moving around. What was the reason for really wanting just like Big Four specifically?
So it's part of that. Um, it's part of, knowing that they claim to be the biggest and the best. And then there's also, when I did work at those two industry jobs, like I said, that Big Four firms did the audits and then Big Four firms were consulted with on tax advice. So I thought if I'm at this level, that's where I need to go if I'm going to go back to public. My decision to refuse the Big Four offer,
Mm-hmm.
I knew it would be a lot more hours of work. So, I had the Big Four lateral move on the table and then the promotion on the table at the same time to the mid tier.
My second question was like, why, what changed your mind? So no, that's really interesting. So now that you've been at your mid-tier firm and you're doing what you're doing, how has that experience been for you?
My experience is unique because I changed jobs in March of 2020. I started with the mid tier firm.
Mhm.
Day one, no one was in the office but like one partner and one staff. We'd be mandated from home. I
Mhm.
never worked from home on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
So it made it really difficult. I think there's that aspect of it that made it challenging. And we were mandatory work from home. So it made things a little harder. Sharing screens and stuff like that is helpful, but sometimes it's a lot easier just to walk up to someone and ask a question. But in that option was just taking away from me. So there's that whole thing. And then there's also actually my older brother called me in April and was like, how do you know how to do your job if you're at home? And when I first started, we were in the middle of busy season. So all the tax returns were already assigned out, all the compliance was signed out, but we had some tax provisions that needed to be worked on. Doing those tax provisions for those private companies was a little bit of every piece of every job I've ever had. So I was getting
Okay.
trial balances in Excel and looking at them and analyzing them. That kind of relates to my experience when I was at the small public firm.
Mhm.
And then knowing all the book tax differences and how to calculate that was a combination of what I did at Tyson and at Hilton. And then completing the provision, doing the current and the deferreds, that was all stuff I learned at Hilton. And so it really felt like the first 6 weeks I was there that I really, really belonged, because I was like, I can take a piece of every job I've ever had and pull from those experiences and provide this work product. Into really being a part of the team was, you guys can finish all the patterns because I started mid-March. We've got a couple of weeks for the deadline left. Let me do these provisions and let me get. Oh, sorry, the camera. My big dog is now in here, so she is on the bed. Are you going to be on camera?
Hi, cutie.
That is
No.
our retriever mix. She is 3 and
That's adorable.
70 pounds.
Oh,
So
wow. What's her name?
that one's Bailey.
Bailey. Okay.
Being able to pull from all my prior job experiences and to do those, I think it kind of solidified like they made the right decision in hiring me.
I think to wrap up, I would like to know if there's some advice that you would have given yourself, like throughout your career, starting out, or through some of like the tougher times that you've gone through. What would you like? What would be the advice you'd give your younger self?
It's kind of hard to say don't compare yourself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a long time, especially when I was in the first firm I worked for. And that resulted in a lot of self-deprecating because I wasn't passing the CPA exam like I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left that firm, I have to be totally honest with you, I didn't think I had what it took to be a CPA.
Oh,
It was
wow.
only when I started that first industry job where I had people closer to my age, where we were, ping ponging ideas off each other. Someone would help me with an Excel file because I didn't know how to do, say, a pivot table very well. But then
Mm-hmm.
we would have someone else come in. And I was like, oh, well, let me teach you this VLOOKUP sum if trick that I have. And it was peers that I had where it wasn't someone who I saw as like a rocket scientist, and they went and were passing the exams. And I was like, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Mm-hmm.
And I could. And, I did eventually. I took a long road to get there, but I did in the end. To the people out there who are studying or thinking about it, it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. I did mine while working full time, and I know a lot of people do that and they work full time in public accounting while do it. I don't know how you did that, working full time at a Big Four and passing on your exams. I could never do it. I used PTO to supplement my studying time.
Mm-hmm.
I took off on Fridays. I spent the whole weekend studying, and I would test on Monday. So I would take a long weekend to do the exams. And that was something that really helped me maintain my focus and just get those last few notes in right before the exams. And another thing about, advice, if you're in the Big Four bus mindset, just know that it's not always that. It's not always that you won't have a good career. It's not always that you won't be paid well. It's not that you can't have a great career. And I think I had blinders on for a while about that because, again, I don't have Big Four experience, and I got to where I am based on grit and hard work and support by family and friends. And I always try to tell people that if you are struggling with the CPA exam and you think you can't do it, here's the trick. It's all mind games,
Mm-hmm.
right? The hardest part is doing the studying. Once you show up to the test, if you're prepared, you can do it. I promise you can do it because I did it. And I didn't have a 4.0 grade point average. And I didn't get selected by a Big Four firm right out of college. Big Four didn't even recruit at the school I went to. One thing I always say to my mom is that it's always so much easier to have a positive point of view or a better attitude about someone else's situation. So if you're going through it and you're experiencing something that's hard and difficult, it's a lot of times, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can't see
Mm-hmm.
the good that's there. You don't always see like all the value that you bring to places, but you can talk with people that you trust, and they can help shed the light on that. I took a long time to get to the CPA, so do it as soon as possible. My sister-in-law is actually a CPA. She's in industry. She's a director at a company, and she did hers right out of college. Did it really quickly, and I don't think I could have done it the way she did it, but she, we're both envious of each other. I was envious that she got to take the time off between school and starting her full-time job to do the studying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't say she's envious of me, but she looks at me and goes, I don't know how you did it while working full time because I never would have had the time. There's no one path in life, and try a few things. If they don't work out, it's okay to mess up, to make mistakes. Find what's interesting to you and really dig in deep there and work hard.
That's great advice. It's definitely so many, good nuggets of knowledge that you shared today. Here I am talking about nuggets again. I think I'm telling you that Tyson really stuck with me. I know what I'm eating for lunch today. Thank you so much for, being on here and sharing your journey. If I were in college again, I would have I didn't know any other path than go Big Four. Like that's what everyone told me. That's like the only thing I really knew. I didn't know any other accountants. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Whenever I was interviewing in school, I did apply to some like lower tiered firms, like a local firm and a mid-tier firm. But I felt like if I had gone there, I would have felt kind of down on myself for not making it to the Big Four. And so I just love hearing, your story because you are going in the direction that you want to go, and you're doing it because and you're making the moves that aren't what's, told to you in college necessarily. So no, I definitely like applaud you for all the success that you've had. Like you said, you don't really get to see, how far you've come until someone else either points it out to you, or you sit down and you talk about it, and then you're like, oh my God, actually I've done a lot. And, you know, it's okay to be proud of yourself. Like, if
Yeah.
you do, these amazing things, it's okay to be proud. Like that's part of the journey, because we're down on ourselves. Why not have the upside of that? I think this was amazing. And I'm sure that, all of us would love to have you back on, since, I can't convince you to make a YouTube channel. So you can always come on to mine. But I'm sure there will be lots and lots of questions. So if is there any other way to get in touch with you? If there was someone out there who had questions, would it be best to be on Twitter, like you said, or any other ways to get in touch with you?
I'll piggyback off one thing you said. I did have a professor who told the whole class to always go work for the biggest firm you can right out of college. For a lot of people, that sets them up really well and you can move up really quickly, but that doesn't mean that's the only path. And this was someone who was a Deloitte audit manager for a while. So there's a firm called BKD. They were the biggest firm that recruited to my school. And I know they're big in Arkansas, they're big in Texas, but they're mid-tier. So that was the biggest firm that came to interview at our school. And I made good connections and could have interviewed, but decided to stay where I was for my personal life, because I was already seeing this young woman who I was very interested in, who I later married. So that's another part of the story.
Gotcha.
You can follow me on Twitter. It's just my name, at Kendall Collier. I keep all my social medias on lockdown, so I will have to accept you. I stay on private because I don't want the whole world to see every little thing I say. I am on LinkedIn, so that'll give you like the full resume if you do want to connect that way in a more professional setting.
I'll put everything in the description box for them to get in touch with you. And then I'm sure there'll be lots of comments because, first tax person up on my channel. This is going to be so exciting. I'm so excited about this.
I hope I did the tax world proud.
I wish I could, I can't talk on behalf of them, but I'm like, yes, I think you did amazing. So thank you again so much, Kendall, for joining me today and, being willing to share your story and being willing to, come back on later on, to chat more on different topics.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys have a great Sunday.
Thank you. Hope you have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you as well. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, Stephie.
Bye.